In media, there is nothing harder to produce than a successful sequel to a popular debut. There's a good reason the music industry has coined the term the difficult second album. In 2001, The Strokes released their debut album Is This It? And turned the entire rock landscape on its head. Alternative rock had been stuck in a post-grunge malaise since 1997. Bands were still desperately trying to be the next Nirvana, despite the fact that grunge was well and truly dead. By the turn of the millennium, bands like Bush were doing their best to Weekend at Bernie's The Corpse of Grunge, while Stained gave birth to the worst mashup since Brundlefly when they tried to mix grunge with nu metal. The Strokes' Is This It? Killed off any remaining attempts to revive the corpse of alt-rock and ushered in the era of the bands. The Strokes, the White Stripes, the Killers, bands that went to art school but tried their best to look like art school dropouts. Personally, I always thought the Strokes were shite, even back in 2001, but there's no denying their debut album changed the metagame of rock music for that era. Their follow-up, 2003's Room on Fire, did not change the musical landscape. If the collector's edition CD was the size of the fucking Swiss Alps, it would still have a difficult time changing any landscapes. The Strokes played it safe and released what was essentially Is This It 1.2, and it pretty much killed their career. Getting a sequel right is incredibly difficult. Stray too far from the formula that helped you find success, and you'll fail. Play it too safely, and again, you run the risk of failure. Sequels are hard. Aw, shit. In part 1 of the rise and fall of Tuff, we talked about the fact that Tuff has been around long enough to have lived through 4 console generations, 4 US presidents, the entirety of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, 1 global pandemic, all 4 phases of the MCU, several wars, the entirety of the McGregor era.
It's got me really fired up.
And 18 Buckethead albums. With such a massive library of content, the quality of Tuff fluctuates more wildly than the needle on a Dana White polygraph test, so not every season is really worth discussing in detail.
Chicken salad, baby.
Unlike part 1, this video isn't going to focus on just one season. For part 2, we're going to take a broader look at the early years of The Ultimate Fighter, the good, the bad, the chicken shit, and the chicken salad.
You know, I ain't no chicken. That's for damn sure.
In the mid to late 2000s, Tuff was still relatively in its infancy, and the show still had a seat-of-the-pants, borderline improvisational tone. Season 2, Team Hughes vs Team Franklin, is generally not very well regarded among Tuff fans, but as a direct follow-up to the season that helped save the UFC, it's still worth taking a slightly closer look at. Season 2 was rushed out to capitalise on the success of Tuff 1, and stepped on every rake it could find in the process. Barely 4 months had passed since Forrest Griffin and Stephen Bonner proved to Dana that they did indeed want to be fucking fighters, and made history in the season 1 finale. The buzz around season 1 hadn't even had a chance to die down before production started on season 2. This time around, the coaches were welterweight champion Matt Hughes, a man who looks like he just received a chin transplant that his face is violently rejecting, and middleweight champion Rich Franklin, the man who beat Ken Shamrock for the right to wear his beautiful waistcoat in the finale of Tuff Season 1. Season 2, Episode 1 aired on August 22nd, 2005. MMA fans all over the world, but mostly America because Spike TV wasn't available outside of the continental United States, tuned in with the childlike wonder of Soulja Boy when he played time-travelling Xbox platformer Braid.
Oh, the fuck. Hey, watch this shit. It's about this little guy in a suit, and he walk around, and he ain't got no point to the game. You just walk around jumping on shit. Watch this shit. Like, you about to die. You be like, oh, shit, I'm gonna die. Hey, then the nigga just go back. This shit stupid as hell, man.
As far as sequels go, Tuff 2 is more Jaws 2 than it is Aliens. It's not as bad as Jaws 4, but then again that's a movie whose first draft involved the shark being mind controlled by a witch doctor and only got worse from there, so not exactly high praise. Season 2 feels like a cover version of Season 1, and not a good cover version. It's more like when Take That got in line to put another bullet into the still twitching corpse of grunge with their cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit. All the ingredients were there for another successful season. A lineup of talented fighters like Rashad Evans and Joe Stevenson, motivational speeches from Dana White.
From what I've seen so far, Jason Thacker, the guy who got picked on the most, had more f***ing heart than you guys.
Coaches' challenges that make the volleyball scene from Top Gun look positively macho. An oddball who drinks his own urine because he believes it gives him healing powers, and at least 200% more kilts. So what went wrong with Season 2? From the word go, Season 2 stumbled. In the very first episode, 3 fighters left the house. Kerry Shaw was forced to leave due to a knee injury. Eli Jocelyn left because
I just can't handle it. It's f***ing too much like jail. Wasn't that? Don't think I'm a bitch. You know what I'm saying? The whole thing, man. I don't even know if I want to be a f***ing fighter no more.
That's the question.
And in an effort to recreate the drama of Bobby Southworth cutting 22 pounds in 24 hours, Kenny Stevens was locked into the YMCA sauna by Rich Franklin. Despite only having to cut 10 pounds in one day, Stevens decided to stop the weight cut and was removed from the house.
George, sir, you don't put me in that sauna, bro. Yeah. Okay.
The situation was so bad, Dana had to give this season's Do You Wanna Be a Fucking Fighter speech before the credits had even rolled on episode 1.
You guys know you're supposed to show up here, you're supposed to train, you're gonna fight, and you have to make weight. This is fucking ridiculous. I don't want to have that whole do you want to be a fucking fighter speech, but we all know why we're here, right? This is no joke, man. This is for real. We run a fucking business with bad motherfuckers who want to fight. You're either it or you're not. If you're scared, and you're scared to get in that octagon and let it go and fight, what are we gonna do? If you're scared, you're scared. But what the did you come here for? Why are you here if you're afraid to fight? Set the tone from here on out, you guys. Set the fucking tone. You guys talk the talk. Walk the fucking walk now. You guys want to go back and be a fucking bartender, a short order cook, a fucking scientist? If that's what you really want to be, then go for it. Just let me know fucking early. If you think you don't want to be here and being a professional fighter and a world champion isn't what you want to be. Cool?
Yes, sir.
Season 1 was a house filled with clashing personalities. The put-upon Thacker, the bully Lieben, the chaotic evil Koscheck, and the quiet religious guy who eventually goes insane, Sanchez. These were the kind of ingredients any reality TV show worth its salt would have killed for. But whereas by the end of episode 1 of season 1, we had already had our first drunken house party, the best we got from the early episodes of season 2 was Rich Franklin and Matt Hughes taking part in the house Bible study.
I'm definitely pleased that guys aren't staying up late at night and drinking. Some of the guys are reading their Bibles together.
Moses dies at the end of Deuteronomy.
Oh, spoilers for fuck's sake, Rich. Willa Ford, the woman so far past D-list celebrity status that you'd need to invent a new alphabet to figure out what list she should be on, is replaced this season by the haunting beauty of Randy Couture.
Wanting, needing, waiting.
While the addition of Willa Ford may have been more pointless than a return address on an envelope full of anthrax, replacing her with Randy only highlighted exactly why Randy should never be allowed a speaking role and gave us a whole new appreciation for Willa Ford.
Looks like you've had an interesting week already. I see some battle wounds and some bruises. That's great. As with all the other challenges, this is a non-striking event. Good morning, fellas. I imagine your surroundings are pretty familiar by now, as it should. Heavyweights are up for elimination. The objective is to, from your knees, remove the other team's socks.
We did 20 ticks, and that was the best one.
Captain America injects all the personality of an undressed mannequin into the role, unleashing a historically listless performance that should have resulted in a restraining order requiring Randy to keep a distance of 500 feet from acting at all times. While Tough One's housemates were out of control, the only thing out of control in Season 2 is the fucking product placement. From Rich Franklin wearing a Zions t-shirt as the camera gazes longingly over him making a Zions protein shake.
Oh, should I put the Zions in my shake? Yeah? Yeah, I would. This is banana apple.
To the totally unscripted moment where Rich breaks a vending machine and steals tubs of Zions for his team.
Are you taking the Zion stuff home?
This stuff.
Yeah. Yes. Who else needs a can of this?
I do.
Brad?
Yes.
You need one, Keith?
I sure could use one. I go through those things so fast.
I call it the food of the gods.
To fighters having to mention right guard extreme even in the middle of challenges.
I'm so glad you used your right guard today. Yep.
Product placement in Season 2 is about as subtle as a Cannibal Corpse song title.
No, I like to take a shake in the morning and shake at night to help me lose weight for my metabolism.
Oh yeah. What do you take, the GNC 50 Grand Slam or the Zions?
Zions. Zions is always my number one thing.
The Zions testosterone. I mean, it's legal.
It's legal, and you know it's pretty much darn the same thing.
Can you imagine compromising your artistic integrity to shill products? Product placement is the last bastion of the creatively bankrupt. Who would ever stoop so low? I could really use a new t-shirt though. Wonder where I could find one. So we've established that Season 2 was worse in almost every way than Season 1, but there's at least one aspect we haven't touched on. Surely with the hottest unsigned fighting talents in the US, at least the fights were entertaining, right?
Judges score the fight the same way, 30-27. All three judges scored the fight 29-28. Winner by unanimous decision, Josh Berkman.
Unanimous decision, Rashad Evans.
By unanimous decision, Jason Von Fleet.
Yeah!
By unanimous decision, winner by unanimous decision.
In 12 episodes, 8 fights went to a decision. The situation was bad enough that Dana had to give yet another motivational speech in an effort to convince the contestants to really brutalize each other for no financial reward.
You like watching people get fucked for free?
And while Koscheck vs. Lieben in Season 1 was less interesting than reading the minutes from the most recent meeting of the Dennis Seaver fan club, the build-up and drama involved meant that it was the highest rated episode of the entire season, and viewership increased episode after episode until the finale. By contrast, for Tough 2, while the viewership started well, it declined with every single episode. Tough was losing viewers every week, despite still being in its post-WWF time slot on Spike. Season 2 was saved only by its live finale, which managed to pull higher ratings than the Season 1 finale. The quality of the fighters this season was also a slight step down from Season 1. None of the fighters were bad. There were no sacrificial lambs like Jason Thacker this time around. But maybe because the first time is always more memorable, fighters like Lieben, Sanchez, Florian and Griffin seem to be remembered by fans more fondly than Season 2 graduates like Seth Petrozelli, Joe Stevenson and Keith Jardine. Promising contestants like Melvin Gillard never reached the level of success that they were supposed to. Gillard entered the house with the kind of misplaced confidence of me DMing Valentina Shevchenko.
Me? Get laid down quick? Bahoo! Bahoo! Dog, do you know who the I am?
To listen to the man talk, you'd think he had already won the competition, and you can tell the show was gearing up to make him the next superstar, as he gets the bulk of camera time in the early episodes. But Gillard went on to lose his first fight and be eliminated from the competition. He was brought back for the Tough Season 2 finale, where his win over fellow contestant Marcus Davis led to him joining the UFC, and while he holds an impressive record of most knockdowns in the lightweight division, he never competed for a belt or even interim title, and his overall record is 32 wins, 22 losses. The most successful name to make it out of Season 2 was without a doubt Rashad Evans. Evans was only the 5th pick for Team Franklin and seemed unnecessarily shit on by Matt Hughes throughout the season.
Rashad has really not shown me much of a heart.
I'm glad you're not on my team. I mean, I made the right pick when I was picking guys in. Well, that's fine. That's fine too, you know. I know it's fine. It's like punching Matt in his face.
After a string of wins in the house that, to be honest, were Seaver-esque bore-fests, he made it to the finale, where he faced 6'7", 260-pound behemoth Brad Imez. For reference, Rashad Evans is 5'11" and a natural light heavyweight. This was the kind of matchup that would put the promoters of Fight Circus into an erection-induced coma. Hughes beat Imez by split decision in a fight that was every bit the back-and-forth war of Griffin v. Bonner. In 2008, 3 years after earning his UFC contract, Evans would prove that time is not a straight line but a flat circle when he won the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship by beating Tough 1 winner Forrest Griffin. Evans' reign atop the lightweight division would be short-lived, as in his first title defence he was brutally KO'd by Lyoto Machida, leading to the now infamous Shad Face meme.
I'm a PC, and I crush people in real life! My name is Rashad Evans. I am a UFC fighter. I use my PC every day in everything I do. You know, I'm always on the computer, searching the web, seeing what's going on, seeing what's going on.
Evans is a fighter who never really got respect or love from fans until after his retirement. This was possibly because his record contains more decision wins than a high court judge, and the relentless memeing. Seriously, Sherdog refuses to let this one die, even going so far as having a 10th anniversary Shad Face appreciation thread. But post-retirement, he seems to have finally gotten some love from fans by just being a genuinely likeable guy, and with successful turns at commentary and analysis. He retired in 2018 after 5 back-to-back losses. Evans returned to competition in Eagle FC in January of 2022, where he picked up his first win since 2013. In true Evans style, he won by decision. Joe Stevenson was the welterweight winner from Team Hughes. After winning the show, Stevenson lost his first fight in the UFC. He moved down to lightweight, where he remained for most of his career. His peak came when he fought for the lightweight title, but unfortunately for Joe, it was against an incarnation of BJ Penn that would later go on to test positive for elevated levels of motivation in a fight that left Stevenson bloodier than how Armie Hammer likes his steak.
Yeah, I see some battle wounds and some bruises. That's great.
Post BJ Penn fight, Stevenson's career never really recovered. He had 3 wins, one of which was against a young Nate Diaz, but he also had 6 losses, 4 of which were back-to-back. He was cut from the UFC in 2011. Stevenson kept fighting in lesser organisations, but at the same time, he was also battling with the far more intimidating opponent of alcoholism.
I've been sober for like 4.5 years now. I haven't drank, I don't do drugs, I don't party. The Joe Stevenson that was here before, I was very numb. You'd see me with a red Dixie cup in a lot of the show because I was young and a little reckless and didn't care. I learned to deal with my emotions by not feeling my emotions. Now, I kind of got all those emotions slapped me in the face. It was crazy.
After getting sober, Stevenson returned to The Ultimate Fighter for 2017's Tough Redemption. He had his first fight in episode 8, which he lost by unanimous decision, before being brought back as a wildcard 1 episode later, and faring even worse. But proving that post-retirement success for a fighter doesn't need to be measured in Burger King adverts or Lamborghini yachts, Joe has a much more down-to-earth level of success. He runs his own gym, Cobra Kai, where he teaches wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and the fighter once known as Joe Daddy Stevenson now proudly displays his new and improved nickname, Joe Granddaddy Stevenson. One of the most interesting characters on Tough 2 isn't a contestant himself, but this man, welterweight coach Matt Hughes.
I like to keep things simple, but once I became champion, things got complicated. I don't even have time for a country breakfast. Zions is the perfect breakfast replacement bar with all the protein and fiber I need.
and it tastes great.
Hughes is an important figure in the early days of mixed martial arts, a former welterweight champion who holds wins over a prime BJ Penn and George St. Pierre, a fighter many consider to be the greatest of all time. Hughes is a UFC Hall of Famer, and deservedly so. In 2017, he was involved in a horrific accident when a train struck the passenger side of his car. He was left with a severe brain bleed and placed into a medically induced coma. He would awake from the coma, but had to learn to walk and talk again. His rehabilitation is nothing short of inspirational, and I wish him nothing but continued success in his recovery. Having said all that, character assassination is described as the slandering of a person, usually with the intention of destroying public confidence in that person. It's incredibly rare that someone would ever self-character assassinate, but that's exactly what Hughes did in his alleged New York Times bestseller, Made in America. I've read some bad martial arts related books in my time, and while Made in America didn't quite make me want to travel back in time to assassinate the mother of the man who invented books in the same way that the amorous adventures of Ishida Kim did, it is nevertheless a book that makes me regret being able to read. The book was ghostwritten by Michael Bisping, a man who also wrote the autobiography for North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il, and I'd be willing to bet money that it was easier to put a positive spin on the story of a man described as a brutal overseer of massive and systematic oppression than it was to make Matt Hughes even a borderline sympathetic character. Made in America is the rambling, barely comprehensible tale of the life of Matt Hughes. Characters are introduced and then never mentioned ever again in the same sentence. Stories that go nowhere and serve no purpose to the narrative are the majority of the narrative. Hughes' ego screams off every page like a jump scare in a Conjuring movie. He is always the smartest, the strongest, the best at everything. His ego is so unbridled, he even has a hard time admitting that Big John McCarthy, a man who is 6 inches taller and 90 pounds heavier than Hughes, is indeed the bigger man.
Despite his nickname, Big John McCarthy wasn't particularly huge in person.
Even before you can open this missive to insanity, he declares himself the most dominant champion in UFC history right there on the cover. Anderson Silva and Jose Aldo might disagree with that, and Anderson Aldo would absolutely disagree. The opening chapters revolve around Matt and his twin brother Mark, growing up on their farm, and what a pair of monstrous shits they were.
I say that everybody with any sense knows being born is a race, which means that I won, because I was first.
He recounts the hilarious tale of how one day for fun, he punched his older sister dead in the stomach to try and make her shit herself because she needed to know that he was the big dog in the house now. Eventually, the police are called because the Hughes twins are in so many fights around town, and Matt thinks this is hilarious and vows it won't stop him from being a scandalous turd. The overall feeling you get reading the first chapters are that the parents should have either medicated them or beat their asses. Hughes' intention is to paint his dad as a monster, but instead, he paints his father as the most sympathetic character in the entire book. An overworked, overstressed father who works 80-hour weeks trying to stave off bankruptcy. At worst, his dad comes across as being a bit grumpy, so when Matt and Mark jump their father and kick the shit out of him because he was mad that Mark was riding a motorcycle without a helmet, it kinda makes you feel a bit like Matt Hughes is the real villain of his own autobiography. To add to the general aura of I'm reading a confessional and not an autobiography, Hughes recounts several tales of flirting with his friend's preteen sister. I'm guessing because he eventually marries this girl, he figures it's cool to tell everyone that he and his brother made out with her when she was 12 and he was 20. But that's like telling everyone in the YMCA that you're the reason there's a sign that says no masturbating in the pool and expecting them to be grateful to you. Hugh's college tales are sub-Porky's hijinks that I guess are supposed to be funny, but instead make him sound like a guy who should by law have to call door to door to announce himself when he moves to a new neighbourhood. At one point, Hughes and his brother are having so much fun bullying some poor kid, they decide to tip his car over on its side. The police are called, and you can almost feel the fucking grin on Matt's face radiating off the page as he boasts about how he outsmarted the detective hired to investigate. Hughes also throws some kid out a window because the kid was upset that Matt crashed his party and ransacked his kitchen. Peak insanity is reached when Matt invites his so-called best friend to his farm to help castrate piglets. And why in the name of Chemo Christ anyone would ever think that's a job you should invite a friend to is beyond my understanding. Hugh's uncle greets them on the farm and proceeds to have a conversation with them while pissing in his pants the entire time. Hugh's friend is shocked, but Matt hand waves it away by saying, "Oh, that's just Uncle Jack, he does that sometimes." Matt then decides to show his friend who the real farm boy is by pelting him with severed testicles and dead piglets.
My brother and I leaned over and grabbed as many testicles and dead baby pigs as we could find. Fiore took off running. We ran right after him, chucking pig parts at our buddy. Finally, we cornered him in the barn. We stood there for another minute, pelting him with testicles and dead baby pigs, while he tried his best to block the carnage. Mark and I were all American wrestlers, so quitting was not an option.
Hughes takes no small amount of pleasure in telling us about how he bullied the crap out of Tim Sylvia. Sylvia, who would later go on to become a UFC heavyweight champion, joined Hughes' gym looking to learn MMA. Matt describes Sylvia as the biggest doofus I'd ever seen, and after months of bullying, Sylvia literally begs of him, "What can I do to be your friend?" Hughes' answer is essentially, "You can try fucking off, I already have enough friends." In the course of one single paragraph, Hughes meets, impregnates, and ditches the mother of his first kid. Neither she nor the child are ever mentioned again, aside from when Hughes claims the reason he couldn't marry her was because she bought him a sweater he didn't like. Hughes eventually marries the 8th grade girl he used to flirt with, but only after pointing out that now that she's 21, she still has, and I quote, "a tight figure," which implies that he thought she had a tight figure when she was 12. He calls her his kid sister, despite the fact that they're fucking, and after they get married, he proceeds to call her mom. And not like a once-off, he constantly calls her mom, to the point where it's genuinely confusing as to who his mother is in this literary ordeal. After his mother/wife decides to get a boob job, Hughes takes her home and can't even wait 24 hours after the surgery before trying to have sex with her. When her stitches rip and bleed all over him, he likens it to the closeness he feels grappling with his buddies at the gym, and now he has that closeness with his wife, because he couldn't keep his dick in his pants long enough to let her recover from major surgery. Made in America is a book that should be read by nobody and forgotten by everybody. It is the gringo pappy of books. Do not buy this book. Do not borrow this book. If you see this book walking down the street towards you, cross over. It is a criminal misuse of artistic license, and we are all made poorer for its existence. It's 2006. The Wii is the most sought-after console of its generation. Its waggle controls would start a motion control gold rush that ultimately led to Microsoft Matt Hughesing their own product's reputation when they released the ill-fated Kinect. Google bought YouTube for $1.3 billion, America hosted the World Cup, and in April, Season 3 of Tough premiered. After the lackluster Season 2, Season 3 needed to get back to what made Tough 1 so watchable.
Yeah.
And in many respects, it managed to achieve that. Season 3 is memorable for a few things. The rivalry between coaches Ken Shamrock and Tito Ortiz, the national treasure that is Michael Bisping, finally getting rid of the ridiculous coaches' challenges, and the only man to ever defeat John Jones, Matt Hamill. Shamrock and Tito's rivalry was easily the most engaging part of the season. Ken Shamrock has been a cornerstone of MMA since fighting Royce Gracie in UFC 1 back in 1993, but by 2006 his best days were long behind him. Over a decade of MMA, pro wrestling and partying had taken its toll, and it showed in his coaching methods. While Tito's team was training MMA all day every day, Shamrock took the approach of a half-assed high school teacher and lets his pupils watch videos all day. Ken makes his guys sit down and watch his old fights while he reminisces about the good old days.
We didn't train this morning. We watched a UFC that I've probably seen a bazillion times. It's just not organized. It's not the kind of camp that I see Tito Solandine running.
It's weird. I don't know what Ken's thinking or why he's not training them harder or teaching them more.
Might get me in something and I could lose. And obviously, Ken doesn't have enough confidence.
So what do you think?
It's pretty cool, I guess.
This is pretty much the worst video ever made.
Napoleon, like anyone can even know that.
You know what, Napoleon? You can leave.
You guys are retarded.
By 2006, Tito's best days were behind him too. One of those days being the time he was in Korn's Got the Life video. But he wasn't nearly as shop-worn as Shamrock. His next 2 wins would be back-to-back wins over the ghost of Ken Shamrock, but after that he would go on to have only 1 win in 9 fights before being cut by the UFC. In a true example of the young eating the old, one of those losses would be to his first pick for Tough 3, Matt Hamill. Shamrock and Ortiz's rivalry wasn't staged for the show. They had a legitimate history of beef that stretched all the way back to Tito's first fight in the UFC. At UFC 18 in 1999, Tito defeated Jerry Bolander, a member of Ken Shamrock's Lion's Den gym. After the win, Tito finger-banged Bolander's corner before displaying Conor McGregor levels of mental warfare when he took a jab at Shamrock's team that was so subtle, so Machiavellian, that you might not even notice it.
There, freeze that. Can you clear that up any? Now vector in on that guy.
Okay, boss.
Alright, lock on and enlarge the Z-axis.
Gotcha.
It was very subtle. On the show, Tito and Ken got into a hold me back bro style confrontation almost daily.
It's all right. We can get it. Oh, yeah. It's okay. What? Hey, watch out, guys. Yeah. Remember last time? I saw paint you with a paintbrush. Yeah, last time. You keep thinking about last time.
And I can't believe I'm actually about to say these words, but when it came to mental warfare, Tito Ortiz, this man...
I'm an old mature. I mean, I'm matured old. Very fast, but at the same time, my body hasn't matured great.
This man...
I want to tell me what you see. Let's go ahead and see by the fight what you saw in the ring.
This fucking man.
Now it's about my kids. I want to live. I want to outlive my children. Of course, 100%.
Actually outwits Shamrock in every interaction.
Mental warfare. And that's what this fighting game was about.
But with the pinnacle of Shamrock's verbal jousting being the time he called Tito a
little bench monkey.
We're not exactly dealing with the wit and wisdom of Oscar Wilde here. Tito and Shamrock would meet in the octagon 3 times throughout their career, with Tito winning all 3 fights via TKO. Ultimately, by the end of the season, Shamrock's complete lack of coaching abilities meant his team lost by 3 fights to 10.
I'm the captain of this ship and I'll go down with it. I'll take full responsibility. Will you?
I'm the coach. I'm the leader of the ship. I failed them miserably.
In terms of the contestants themselves, Tough 3 has probably the weakest roster of fighters since Rise of the Robots. The skill ceiling is so low, Dennis Seaver could probably limbo underneath it. Of the 16 contestants, only Bisping and Hamill had any tangible kind of post-tough success, but Hamill's most famous Octagon win was the time John Jones tried to turn his head into concept art for a new Bioshock game. Despite dominating the fight, Jones was disqualified for illegal elbow strikes, and the legend of Matt Hamill, the only man to ever defeat John Jones, was born.
My name's Mike the Count Bisping. I've flown halfway across the world for this. I feel I've got what it takes to make a real living out of this, a real career.
Michael Bisping, aka DJ Mikey B. The Englishman who spoke fluent English, yet required English subtitles.
Peer pressure. Sound, give me a bottle.
Was the standout fighter of the season, and probably one of the greatest tales of perseverance in all of MMA. After giving up a promising career as a warm-up act for the Venga Boys, Bisping joined the cast of Tough 3 and was the third pick for Team Ortiz. He went on to win the entire season, and post-Tough, he became a sort of hate figure among fans of the UFC. His early persona was that of an arrogant, cocky trash talker, so when Dan Henderson sent him on the lightless walk at UFC 100, the memeing was second only to Shadface. For the majority of his career, he was regarded by many as a perennial mid-carder, a solid fighter who seemed to fall short every time he so much sniffed a title eliminator fight. By 2014, almost a decade into his tenure in the UFC, he seemed to have cemented his place as the guy you wheel out whenever an up-and-comer needs a win to boost their popularity. But around 2015, a funny thing happened to Bisping's career. He got popular. The trajectory of Bisping's personality essentially pulled what I like to call the inverse McGregor theory. If we take a look at the trajectory of McGregor's personality and likability over time, while his likability started out high, it decreases over time as his dickhead tendencies increase. Bisping pulled the inverse by starting his career with low likability and high dickhead tendencies, but over the years, his likability skyrockets as his personality mellows. To be fair to Bisping, he credits his initial abrasive persona to his former management team telling him that trash-talking dickheads are what people paid to see. Alongside a reassessment of his personality, fans also re-evaluated Bisping's career. While it was true he had never come into title contention, what he had come into contention with was steroid-guzzling freak beasts like No Known Weaknesses Vitor, yet Bisping himself had never once popped for steroids. He was just an all-natural, jacked white boy.
Deal with it.
The fact that he had fought no drug cheats like Vitor and Dan Henderson while staying clean himself meant that people began to regard those losses as the moral victories of a man who refused to cheat in order to gain an advantage. Much like the inverse McGregor theory, Bisping's reputation only increased, while Vitor's reputation was worth less than an autographed copy of Made in America. But the true turning point for Michael in fans' eyes was his 2016 fight with Anderson Silva.
This fight with Anderson is a big one. I'm going home back to England in front of my home crowd, my friends, my family, my home nation, and the biggest fight of my career. Who's going to win, me or Anderson Silva?
Anderson Silva, I think.
What? No, who's going to win?
Anderson Silva.
Right.
Because he's the champion. Yeah!
Misdirection.
After 2 hard-fought rounds, in which Bisping actually dropped Silva, late in round 3, Bisping's mouthguard came out. He took his eyes off Anderson for a split second to appeal to Herb Dean, and in that split second, Silva landed a flying knee so precise it should have required a pilot's license. Before he could follow up with any further shots, the end of round bell rang. Silva, thinking he had just won by knockout, began celebrating. But Bisping is from the north of England, the region that gave us Oasis, Morrissey, and all the Oasis spin-off bands. Northerners are used to suffering. Referee Herb Dean communed with his spirit guide Steve Mazzagatti and refused to call the fight. Had Silva thrown a single follow-up strike to the flying knee, the fight would have been waved off. His early celebration cost him dearly, as battered, bloodied, and quite possibly knocked out, Bisping outpointed him for 2 more hard-fought rounds.
Yeah, I see some battle wounds and some bruises. That's great.
Ultimately winning by decision. Bisping found himself riding a 3-fight win streak and a surge of popularity after his stunning display of toughness against Silva. So when Chris Weidman pulled out of his title fight against Luke Rockhold at UFC 199,
I text Dana right then and there, and I think it was something along the lines of, if none of those pussies can make it to the octagon, you know where I am.
Dana, who is it? Who's going to fight Luke Rockhold in UFC 199?
The next guy in line is Michael Bisping.
The majority of us don't go to work each morning with the worry of picking up a life-changing injury hanging over us. It's taken as given that we'll arrive home each night in the same state we left in the morning. That is not a comfort afforded to professional fighters. By 2016, and the biggest fight of his career against Luke Rockhold, that life-changing injury had already occurred. 2 years prior, after a head-kick knockout loss to Vitor Belfort, Bisping suffered a detached retina. Surgery and treatments had no effect, and after a year spent with no MMA training or even exercise, he was forced to reconcile with the fact that he had been left permanently blind in his right eye. It's one thing to suffer a life-changing injury at work, but another thing altogether to suffer a life-changing injury and proceed to lie about its severity to your employer so that you can keep on working. But that's exactly what Bisping did. He cheated on eye exams, fooled doctors, and lied his way back into the UFC, and going into the biggest fight of his life, having to relearn how to fight without any depth perception, Bisping had to listen to Rockhold try and conjure an insurance policy he could point to in the event that he lost.
I've been dealing with a knee injury. I'm not gonna lie about this whole camp, but I don't pull out of fights. I fight through injuries. I don't care what the circumstances are. I tore my MCL. I haven't grappled this whole camp.
After the fight,
I just started kicking last week.
Meanwhile, Bisping was living with an injury so much worse that he couldn't afford to reveal it to anyone, or he'd never be allowed fight again. Very few people gave Bisping even a forlorn hope of winning. His win over Silva was downplayed because Anderson was past his prime. He had already lost to Rockhold once before in 2014. This title shot was seen by some as an act of charity by the UFC for all the years of services rendered. Thanks for breaking yourself for our entertainment. Here's a shot at gold we know you'll miss. The fans and odds makers were already planning how they were going to spend their winnings. Even Bisping himself said, "I know I'm expected to lose. The world is expecting me to lose this fight."
I knocked him out and choked him out last time. And it's going to be hard to top that, but I believe I can. I'm going to knock his eye back straight.
We're going to see from Bisping, and that's his trademark.
My name is Mike the Count Bisping. I've gone halfway across the world for this. I feel I've got what it takes to make a real living out of this, a real career.
Just an average bloke. You're just an average bloke.
Good use of English
I'm a
terminology.
fucking samurai.
It's 2008. In the years since Tough 3, we've seen Facebook transition from Mark Zuckerberg's personal stalking tool to becoming the dominant social media platform, a title it retained for over a decade until it became home to more elderly relatives than your grandmother's funeral and ultimately became the seedbed for the downfall of civilization. Chad Warden, the Gavrilo Princip of the 6th generation console war, uploaded to the genesis of the YouTube troll video.
I'm talking about that PS triple. The PS triple. I ain't talking about that Wii.
And reality TV is still in its zenith. Tough has fallen into a pattern more predictable than a screenplay for The Incredible Hulk written by Hamzat Chimaev, like a calendar bought from Wish.com. Tough now has 2 seasons per year, every year. In the intervening years, we had some big moments in Tough history. Season 4 was subtitled The Comeback. It was the first attempt by the UFC to change up the formula of Tough, as it was the first season that had a specific theme. Tough 4 saw the return of fighters who for one reason or another had been dropped by the UFC. The welterweight and middleweight winners of the show would win an immediate title shot. Travis Lutter, the man you may recall as being Michael Jordan-esque in his grappling, was the middleweight winner of the show. He won an immediate title shot against a prime Anderson Silva, which in hindsight was a bit like winning the opportunity to face off against gravity by throwing yourself off a building. Matt Serra, the welterweight winner, won the opportunity to challenge George St. Pierre for the belt. GSP had just kicked the country breakfast right out of Matt Hughes to win the title.
Yeah, I see some battle wounds and some bruises. That's great.
In what was considered to be one of the single greatest upsets in UFC history, Serra knocked out GSP in round 1 to become not just the welterweight champion, but also the first ever Ultimate Fighter winner to win a title. Season 5 introduced us to the legend of Nathan Diaz.
Suck that King Cobra out there, motherfuckers. If you got anything to say to me, say it to me, motherfucker. Suck my dick, alright? Fuck you, bitch. What?
Fuck that guy. People say that all the time, you know? Oh, he's a mental fighter, or emotional fighter. I don't even know what the fuck that means. That's the most retarded shit I ever heard. Mentally.
And Andy Wang. And if you're wondering who Andy Wang is, well, Andy Wang is a warrior.
Take him down, Andy! Where's the shot, Andy? Andy, take him down! Go now! Take him down!
BJ is screaming from the corner to take him down. But the kid will not fucking listen to BJ and will not take this guy down.
Disappointed that I lost, but I don't feel like a loser, honestly. I feel like people, when they see Andy Wang, they don't say, oh, he's a punk. They say, hey, man, this is a warrior.
Come on, man. How can you sit there and be sad in the ring? Doesn't want to listen to a word anybody says. It's unreal.
Season 6 had a trip to the hospital more uncomfortable than the results of a Targaryen paternity test.
Let's see what doctor says. The test that you had showed two things. Number one, you did break your elbow.
I'm going under depression now.
You cannot fight with that elbow.
No, I'm fighting. That's for sure. I'm fighting. I don't know what's wrong with you. I'm here for fight, you know?
I'm not trying to be an ass, I swear. Seriously. I'm like really nice guy, but don't push my buttons. Now you're pushing me.
You fractured, dislocated your...
I don't want to hear you. I'm sorry, doc. I don't want to yell. I don't want to hear you. You said the same thing like over 120 times already. Do something so I can fight. I believe in your diplomas, doctor. I know you're a wise guy. I'm a idiot, man. I don't want to fucking talk about it. This 5'4" guy is telling me not to fight. Doctor is out of his fucking mind. He doesn't know shit. I'm walking. I'm fucking walking. I don't want to sit in the car. This, man. I'm not over. I'm not over. I'm talking to Dana White today.
This is gonna suck, bro, man, but I just talked to Dana. They're gonna send you home. They're gonna bring somebody else in. You know what I mean?
Roman Michian was replaced with a man named John Koppenhaver. Koppenhaver, who also goes by the name War Machine, is such an unfathomable piece of human detritus that all I'll tell you about him is he won't be eligible for parole until he's 72. Season 8 of Tough aired on September 17th, 2008. This season's coaches were Antonio Nogueira, the man who famously defeated Bob Sapp back when Sapp looked like a Sherman tank made of beef and steroids, and music enjoyer Frank Mir.
Music is so important to me. It inspires me, calms me, it motivates me.
The first man to defeat jacked Caucasian male, Brock Lesnar. From a purely entertainment perspective, Season 8 was the true heir to Tough 1's crown. While the intervening seasons had been entertaining in their own way and had produced good fighters, none of them were truly must-see TV. But Season 8 was the kind of TV that appealed to casuals and hardcore fans alike, and it showed in the ratings. Much like the Liban Koscheck drama of Season 1, ratings for Season 8 increased week on week, fueled by a desire among viewers to see one fighter in particular get his comeuppance. But the ratings boom also exposed the exploitative truth of reality TV, that the people who viewers are most likely to tune in to see are often the kind of people least equipped mentally to handle the intense scrutiny that comes with being on camera 24/7. Season 8 is home to more meatheads than Silent Hill. This season saw in-house fights, a prank war that started lightheartedly but ended with the kind of frat boy bullshit that would fast track you onto a register if it happened outside of the tough house, drunken brawls and interventions from Dana White. We're 5 minutes into episode 1 and confronted with gold standard stupidity like this.
Be honest, dude, I belong with Napoleon, dog, Alexander, dude, Hitler. That's what I belong with, dog. I'd be conquering, dude, period. You know what I mean?
Unsurprisingly, Jose, I belong with Hitler dog, Aguilar, didn't even make it into the house after he took the very Hitler-esque way out by quitting before he could lose. If you thought the bed-pissing scene in Tough 1 was the upper limit of bad taste that this show could achieve, well then.
We have such sights to show you.
Things started innocently. Krzysztof Szysinski, a man who looks like you just hit randomize in creative fighter mode, initiated a prank war when he saran wrapped all of Team Nogueira's underwear to Ryan Bader's bed. Team Nogueira retaliates by smearing fish oil all over Mir's bedroom. Pretty toothless stuff so far. But when Team Mir puts itching powder in Team Nogueira's beds, things escalate from harmless fun to rejected ideas for an early 2000s gross-out comedy faster than you can say Vinnie Magalhaes just pissed on my pillow.
Despite an intervention from Nogueira himself calling for an end to hostilities, the Great Prank War of 2008 continues to intensify. After noticing that Team Nogueira keeps stealing his fruit platter, the accurately nicknamed Filthy Tom Lawler and several other members of Team Mir sought revenge by relieving themselves into the fruit platter and placing it back in the fridge. The fruit platter, along with the clandestine payload, were eagerly consumed by unwitting members of Team Nogueira.
Yeah, we did eat piss.
Felipe Nover of Team Nogueira complains someone has been stealing his sushi. Not one to be outdone, Kyle Kingsbury enacted revenge for the piss platter by pleasuring himself onto the sushi.
We spunk on the sushi and he eats it.
David Kaplan of Team Mir devoured not only the sushi, but several million strands of Kyle Kingsbury's DNA.
Let's sing I Ate Somebody Else's Semen.
Kaplan and Tom, I thought it would be a good idea to drink piss out of a cup. Pretty disgusting. I don't really do that. No one I know does that back at home.
I ate somebody else's semen.
Season 8 is also home to insanity like David Kaplan boasting about how he can't be knocked out and demanding Tom Lawler punch him in the face.
Do it, just do it!
Lawler acquiesces, and while it's true he can't be knocked out, Kaplan can get hit so hard that he collapses and goes asleep for a full minute.
I wasn't unconscious. I mean, did it knock me down? Yeah, but I wasn't knocked out.
But all of this madness is before mentioning the real reason people returned to Season 8 week after week, and that was for this man, Junie Browning.
My name's Junie Allen Browning. What sets me apart from all the other guys is I can actually fight.
From episode 1, Browning was being positioned as the breakout star of the show.
Do I think Jose Aguilar could beat me? He has a better chance of getting me pregnant.
He dominated Jose Aguilar, while Dana and Frank Mir gushed like love-struck teenagers over his skills.
And his jiu-jitsu's looking good, footlocks moving around, and cocky as all hell.
In the tryouts, he came up to the table and said, "What do you want me to beat him with?" I said, "A triangle." He put him in the triangle and looked at me and goes like this, and then grabbed his head and made him tap.
I like him.
But hiding in plain sight was the millstone that would ultimately drag his promising career down with it.
I heard there's free alcohol in the house. That ain't good.
On one of his first nights in the house, Junie gets so hammered he goes from fun drunk to violent drunk to remorseful drunk in the span of an evening. Maybe it was the pressures of being on national TV in a house full of tap-out wearing meatheads getting to Junie, who was at the time just a 22-year-old kid, but it kept happening with escalating intensity.
He's gonna be the Chris Lieben of the show. You know, I think it might even be worse than Chris Lieben of the show, you know.
In episode 4, the house gathers to watch UFC 84, which in hindsight was a bit like inviting a cow over to watch a McDonald's advert, as Vanderlei Silva would get knockout of the night when he sent tough 2 contestant Keith Jardine on the lightless walk.
So sitting there watching the UFC, you know, having a great night of fights, and Junie and Shane get the wine bottle.
Over the course of the fights, Junie proceeds to get absolutely rat-arsed, and we see the first instance of him being a dangerously violent drunk, when in retaliation for having peanuts thrown at him, he throws a glass directly at Kyle Kingsbury.
You don't give me my lightweight glass at me, man.
Junie and fellow contestant Shane Nelson begin trashing the pool area and trying to instigate fights. Unnoticed by them, Krzysztof Szynski throws Junie's clothes into the pool. This leads to a shoving match between Junie, a lightweight, and Szynski, a light heavyweight. The entire confrontation ends with what will probably be an idea for the next fight circus, when Junie tries out his pool jitsu on Ryan Bader.
Stop!
Dana has to come for an intervention.
Junie is a punk and possibly a drunk.
And if you couldn't tell from all the tap-out gear and tribal tattoos that this was the late 2000s, then Dana's insult of choice should probably give it away.
Retarded. You're a drunken retard too. Quit acting like retards.
It's worth noting that after the Lieben Koscheck Southworth incident in Tough 1, alcohol was removed from the house. In season 5, Marlon Sims and Noah Thomas were kicked off the show for fighting in the house, but after Junie essentially tried to glass a contestant, fight half the house, and admits to being an alcoholic.
Do you have a drinking problem?
Yeah.
You do?
The best Dana does is essentially tell him, "Get your shit together, retard." The depressing truth at the heart of all this is that this is what the average person watches these shows for. Dana knew it, the producers knew it, and the ratings proved it. Junie was never in danger of going home as long as that line kept going up. Over the course of the season, Junie threw more glasses at people.
Dude, what the we're talking. I'm not talking to you.
What's wrong with you? I don't know, man. I can't figure out if you're retarded.
And let his just bleed flag fly when, incensed by what he saw as a boring-ass wrestle-hump victory, he hopped into the cage after teammate Shane Nelson lost and had to be restrained by Frank Mir.
Just lay out people like a bitch. What's wrong with you, Junie? Exactly what the UFC did. Boring-ass wrestler.
He wants me to kick him off the show. Same Survivor and vote him off. Beat him off. That didn't sound good, did it?
He made it to the semi-finals, but ultimately lost via submission to Efrain Escudero, who went on to win the competition.
Of course I'm gonna fight again. I know y'all were wanting me gone, but it's too bad.
Post-Tough, Junie was brought back for the live finale, where he beat Dave Kaplan by armbar.
Congratulations. Look, you look good on the show, but I gotta tell you, watching you on the show and then watching now, market improvement. All right, well, most importantly, in your performance tonight, you looked outstanding. Great stand-up, great ground game, and we look forward to seeing you again.
He was given a shot in the UFC and fought Cole Miller at UFC Fight Night 18. He lost by guillotine. After the loss, he was cut by the UFC, but not because of the loss. In October of 2009, in what Junie later admitted was an attempt to take his own life, he took an overdose of Klonopin, an anti-anxiety drug. In the hospital, he assaulted staff, shoving one female nurse and tried to fight two male nurses. He threatened them by saying something I can't read aloud for fear of YouTube sending my entire channel to the Shadow Realm. He was immediately dropped from the UFC, with Dana stating, "He has some serious issues that are beyond me and what I can do, but he needs more help than I can give him. I did what I could for him."
You know, I just wanted to get an opportunity to not even explain myself or make excuses. I just wanted to apologize. I have a lot of problems and I'm working on them. That's just about all I can really say. You know what I mean? I can't change overnight. I'm working on them, but you know, I'm truly sorry for what happened. You know, if I could take it back, I definitely would. But I promise you I'll get better. I promise you, you'll see. It might be baby steps, but eventually I'll get better and I'll make it up to everybody.
Or do you feel as though you've learned something from all this?
I mean, you know, it was more of a depression thing. It wasn't like, to be honest with you, I don't even remember a whole lot of the incident. You know what I mean? It was just a stupid mistake. You know, trying to hurt myself and stuff. There's a lot more to the assault story than what people think. I at no point hit anybody at all. I was shoving people and stuff because people were trying to take a hold of me, and it wasn't even females. And a matter of fact, when I made that statement about, you know, killing the guy and his family, what they failed to mention is before that, when I was in restraints, one of the guys punched me in the face.
He went back to fighting in smaller promotions, but from 2009 to 2010, he only had 1 win and 3 losses. This is the part of the story where, like other tough contestants who struggled on in the minor leagues after losing the show, they eventually disappear into obscurity, their Tapology page goes dormant, and they're forgotten only by the most ardent MMA fans who might invoke their name years later for a Reddit post titled "Guess Who I Saw at Walmart." And while Junie definitely disappeared, having a contract put on his life by the Thai Mafia isn't exactly DB Cooper levels of obscurity. In 2011, Browning was living and training at Tiger Muay Thai in Phuket, Thailand. Things seemed to be looking up for him. He even made a self-deprecating video poking fun at how he managed to screw up his entire career.
What's up, guys? This is the lunatic here, Junie Browning. Is your life going a little too good? Are you headed straight to the top? F that shit. Listen here, guys. I've developed a surefire system to self-sabotage your career and your life on 5 simple discs. Disc 1, how to throw bottles at people. Disc 2, how to develop a bipolar disorder within minutes. Disc 3, how to pick fights with people 3 times your size. Disc number 4, how to completely piss off your boss while flushing your career down the toilet. Disc number 5, all at the same time. I'm Junie Browning, life coach.
In December 2011, Browning and his girlfriend were drinking in a local bar. Accounts of what happened next vary. Locals claimed Junie instigated a brawl by attacking 5 patrons in the bar, while Browning himself claimed he and his girlfriend were waiting outside the bar for a taxi when a woman they had met earlier that night began verbally harassing the pair, and when the bar owner, Simon Menzies, came out and joined in, a fight broke out. Regardless of how it began, how it ended was with Junie being assaulted, dragged back inside the bar, stabbed, glassed, hit over the head with a bottle, and beaten into a fetal position by a group of people. Only when his girlfriend threw herself on top of him to shield him from the attacks did they stop. Junie was taken to hospital, and there, another scuffle broke out, as he, the woman from the bar, and Simon Menzies were all placed in the same room. Junie's friends texted him to say there was a very real threat on his life from the Thai Mafia. People were on their way to the hospital at that very moment to kill him. In the middle of the night, he ripped out his IV, and both he and his girlfriend fled the hospital and went into hiding. After the bar brawl, Junie dropped off the face of the earth for several years. It's hard to find any information about him at all during this time, until out of the blue, he popped back up in 2016 for a fight at Hard Rock MMA, which he won by TKO. Posts on forums around this time suggest he was training at 10th Planet with Eddie Bravo. There's talk of long dead Facebook posts claiming Junie is now sober and taking training seriously. A friend of a guy someone knows met him in a rehab clinic and he was doing well and eager to leave his old image behind. A lot of hearsay, none of it verifiable. Whatever happened, Junie became a digital ghost. The last known photo of him I could find was posted in 2022 on the underground forums by comedian Adam Hunter. Hunter claimed the photo was taken at a show a few years ago, so if we factor in COVID and lockdowns, a best guess would put this at some time in 2019. In Hunter's forum post, he says, "He was doing great and seemed like he really had his life together. He seemed really happy." And I wish this was where the story ended. Junie finally getting his life together and leaving behind the twin spectres of his troubled childhood and years of addiction. But life is rarely that kind. In January of 2021, text messages between Junie and an unnamed recipient surfaced in which Junie stated he's now homeless, staying at shelters, and just had his suitcase with all his belongings stolen. In his final text exchange, a missive from a man who was once a talented 22-year-old with all the potential to be a star in a sport that would soon take over the world. Junie is asked what he plans to do next. His last message coldly states, "Hopefully die soon." In March of 2022, a little over a year since the text messages about being homeless, Junie's brother Robert posted on Facebook urging people for information about Junie's whereabouts. Robert claims no one had seen or spoken to Junie for 6 months. Frustratingly, that was where the story ended as far as what could be gleaned online, and originally this was where my script ended, but I couldn't let Junie's story end like this. I reached out to his brother, MMA fighter and Tough Season 9 contestant Robert Browning, to see if he would be willing to give us an update, and he was kind enough to reply. Thankfully, Junie is alive. He's still living in Florida, where he's been in and out of treatment centres. He is unfortunately still struggling with depression and addiction, but Robert is hoping to open his own gym in Kentucky and convince Junie to come back and coach with him, and I for one would love to see this redemption arc of his story be written. It's important to remember that on the show, Junie was only 22 years old. He was thrust into the limelight of national TV, and with an admitted drinking problem, he was locked into a house with unlimited free alcohol. I have a hard time thinking of any 22-year-old that I came up with not struggling similarly. Ultimately, Junie's is the all too common story of someone blessed with raw talent, but cursed with childhood trauma and addiction, a blend which all too often drags people down, never to surface again. But Junie's story doesn't have to end here. As 2009 drew to a close and the first decade of the 2000s breathed its last, the golden age of Tough was also waning, but with a classic pairing of coaches and a viral internet sensation as a contestant, Season 10 saw the highest all-time ratings and assured that the golden age would go out on a high. Full disclosure, I fanboy for this season the way certain types of single men do for Joker. When I started writing these videos, it was basically all a setup so I could just talk about Season 10. And honestly, some of my love for Season 10 is rooted in nostalgia. When this season aired in late 2009, I had just moved out of home for the first time and was living with my girlfriend, who 3 years later would become my wife. We had an old TV barely bigger than an iPad and dial-up tier internet. Netflix and streaming wasn't even a thing, so on our shitty TV every week, we tuned into Tough 10, Rampage v Rashad. Season 10 is definitely more akin to Season 3, Shamrock v Ortiz, than it is the sushi avec special sauce hijinks of Season 8. The fights weren't the best you'll see, it didn't produce a slew of Hall of Famers like Season 1, and there were no Junie Browning, Chris Lieben style characters, but Season 10 is infinitely rewatchable for the dynamic of its coaches, Season 2 winner Rashad Evans, and Rampage Jackson. God damn it, I thought I'd fixed that. Rampage and Rashad could not have been more different. Evans is effortlessly cool, completely unflappable, and focuses only on winning, despite Rampage being more in your face than a 90s video game mascot. Rampage, on the other hand, treats the show like he's back in high school.
See, man. You doing good? Great, man. I like the tip. I said,
He relentlessly bullies cast member Daryl Schoonover for having man boobs.
He got titties. He got titties.
We've got titties.
We noticed that one of the fighters, he was kind of a, fat, pudgy guy, like a heavyweight, and he had some titties.
We choose Schoonover.
Titties.
Versus Zach.
We're gonna win it though, right? He ain't gonna win nothing, titties. Titties. It's not a whiskey drink. Oh, he gonna win a wet t-shirt contest. You got milk, bitch. What, I'm supposed to be scared of you?
Let's say it.
I'm supposed to be scared of you, titties? Now he want to take her for titties. You know what I'm saying? Probably because he's jealous because titties got titties and he ain't got no titties. So you know Rashad like playing with his nipples. I bet he wish he had some titties to play with. Titties is my favorite character on there. He got some nice bajugga-juggers.
He's a sore loser who takes his frustration out on doors that appear flimsier than my excuses as to why I can't come hang out this weekend.
Every time I lose my temper like that, I feel ashamed because it's kind of embarrassing. It's like kind of like a kid throwing a tantrum or something. It's kind of embarrassing, man. The door didn't do anything to me.
And he puts more effort into his pranks than he does training his team. But while Rampage may be a bully, a sore loser, and kind of a dick, he's really funny while he does it.
I guess I would choose that camera guy right over. Come on, baby, no.
While other tough coaches had naked contempt for each other, such as Rhonda and Misha in season 18, or sexually charged relationships like Joanna and Claudia in season 23, Rampage and Rashad's relationship was compelling, not because they hated each other like Shamrock and Ortiz, but because they could switch from laughing and joking with each other one moment to DEFCON 4 the next.
Start last fight.
Yeah, Rashad's last fight, he did the stanky leg in the fight.
Hey, y'all boys bad, boy. You think you're the man?
All you do is talk.
All I do is talk.
All you do is talk.
You can't keep your mouth so you get knocked out. Think about it. Think about it, Rashad. You so full of yourself. Hey, why you got one shoe on, one shoe off?
Because I was ready to break one of your mother ass, that's why. See, me and Rampage relationship works like this. We joke around, and then next thing you know, it's the underlying, like, I want to punch you in the face type of joking around, you know?
Steven Seagal once posed the question,
what is the Buddha nature?
This question was answered in season 10, and the answer is Rashad Evans. If Tito Ortiz somehow managed to mentally outmaneuver Ken Shamrock at every turn in season 3, then Evans is a Zen master who keeps his calm at all costs and mentally Death Stars Rampage's Alderaan across the entire season. Every interaction between the two is a verbal 10-8 round to Evans. Every prank Jackson tries to pull is Uno reversed by Team Evans just laughing it off. No matter how hard he tries to wind up Rashad, Evans never loses the Buddha nature. In terms of the competition itself, Evans outplays him in the team selection by picking literally every single fighter who would go on to have any kind of post-tough success. Roy Nelson, Matt Mitrione, Justin Wren, and whoever this guy is. Evans wins all but one fight, and both fighters in the finale are Team Evans fighters. Rampage's sole pick of any note was viral superstar Kevin Ferguson, aka Kimbo Slice. Slice was a bouncer turned street fighter whose backyard fighting videos were to mid-2000s YouTube what Mr. Beast is today, something that should be criminalized yet still generates more clicks than a novice chiropractor.
There's different neighborhoods, you know what I'm saying? In every neighborhood, in every city, there's a guy who's always a tough guy. There's always a bully. There's always, you know, a butt wipe. You know what I'm saying? There's always someone who just you know what I'm saying? Those are the guys that I like to bang with, you know what I'm saying? I like to throw hands with, because I'm not that type of guy.
Backyard fighting seemed to be like the fidget spinner of that era. Such was the hunger for watching untrained people windmilling at each other. Websites sprung up left and right offering videos of real fights, and Kimbo was featured in a Rolling Stone article where he was described as the fearsome king of the underground bare knuckle world. On camera, Slice was so intimidating, he came across like an amalgamation of Mike Tyson and the Candyman.
It don't stop. It never stops.
He demolished everyone he fought so brutally that the only people who can get away with showing his videos on YouTube nowadays are the official UFC channel.
Yeah, I see some battle wounds and some bruises. That's great.
After Kimbo had cleared out more streets than Mayor Mike Hagar, the money from street fighting began to dry up. In need of a new revenue path, Kimbo made the move to MMA.
A friend of ours knew Boss Rudin, and this year was my first year linking up with these guys and learning everything I can learn, and you know, and coming over to MMA, you know, and hopefully I'll have a good career in it.
He had 5 fights, the first of which was an exhibition match against Ray Mercer under the Cage Fury promotion, which he unbelievably won by guillotine choke. Following the win, Kimbo had 4 more fights under the banner of Elite XC. Kimbo scored a win over the legend himself, the original pit fighter Tank Abbott. But in his last fight for Elite XC, he lost by 13-second KO to Tough 2 contestant Seth Petrozelli. The loss seemed devastating for Kimbo's reputation. The street fighter, who looked like he actually fought streets, like he was out here punching through solid concrete, the most intimidating man on YouTube, knocked out by a guy who couldn't win the Ultimate Fighter. Like an overly eager coprophiliac, Dana White never could resist the opportunity to shit on someone. He took aim at Kimbo with all the diplomacy of a Kim Jong-un family reunion.
Why? Because they thought that Kimbo Slice was going to viciously knock him out. But Kimbo Slice sucks. Like I've said now for the last few months, this fucking guy can't fight, and he got knocked out in 13 seconds by a guy who didn't win the Ultimate Fighter and who didn't win fights in the UFC. They brought him up from the undercard to fight the main event guy and knocked him out in 13 seconds.
Kimbo Slice.
You know, Kimbo Slice is a street fighter, and actually in a street fight, he fought Sean Gannon and lost in one of those internet street fights. Sean Gannon came into the UFC and fought somebody that nobody's ever heard of or ever seen again, and he got hurt so bad he was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Kimbo Slice would get murdered in the UFC.
Dana was never going to allow Kimbo in the UFC, and Dana White is a man of his word. When he says something is going to happen, you can take that to the bank. So Kimbo was in the UFC a year later. Kimbo entered the tough house with a target on his back. His celebrity status and a fighting style everyone perceived as one-dimensional meant the entire house wanted to claim his scalp. Over 4 million people tuned in to watch episode 1 of season 10 and see what this street-fighting lunatic Kimbo Slice was like in real life. But it turned out that Kimbo Slice, the vicious backyard brawler with fists like hairy kettlebells, was possibly the nicest, most humble and introspective character in the entire house.
Now I'm here without nothing, away from everyone, and I really took the time to find out, you know, who the enemy was. And it's not that it was the enemy, it was the enemy. The enemy. The enemy. The inner me.
Kimbo so impressed everyone in the house with his humility, work ethic and good nature that most of the house rallied around him like a mascot.
Kimbo's a nice guy. I mean, he's a good guy. You know, you can't be a hater on him.
I feel a connection with Kimbo, man. He's just a good person. Just looking back at the obstacles that were put in front of him, you know, the things that were put in front of him would probably crush the mental state of any other man. And he seemed to weather it and keep moving forward, you know. I have yet to see him quit. I have yet to hear him say, I can't. All I've ever heard him say is, I want, and he tries and he works hard every single day.
Oh no, pop.
What did it feel like when you knew everybody, like when it hit the mainstream and everybody started watching it?
We actually put it out on the net a whole year after. I don't get the big head about nothing too much, you know what I'm saying? I really be low key by you know what I'm saying? And you know, like, okay, that's you the guy that fighting. Yeah, that's me, what's up? They want to hug and take a picture and look at a knuckle and all that. Yeah, and that's cool, you know what I'm saying? I'm cool with it. Stay humble, you know, low to the earth.
Yeah, I feel you on that, man.
A bird that fly high got to eventually come to the ground to get water.
In episode 2, Rampage attempted to eliminate Evans' #1 pick, James McSweeney, but Rampage has all the tactical awareness of a drunken rioter, and Team Rampage lost the fight. Team Evans now had control of the fight picks, so Rashad returned the favour and matched Rampage's #1 pick, Kimbo, up against one of his best guys, Roy Nelson. Nelson, a former champion in the now defunct MMA promotion IFL, made short work of Kimbo on the ground. Despite hints that he could return as a wildcard later in the season, Kimbo wouldn't fight again on the show. His tough journey was over.
It's a fight, it's a battle, and you know what I'm saying, I gotta keep at it. Hey, keep the noise down! Guys, man.
True to his word that Kimbo would never fight in the UFC, Dana gave Slice a contract to fight in the UFC. He was brought back for the live finale in December of 2009, where he fought Houston Alexander. Alexander has an air of the Dennis Sievers about him, with an almost dead-even split of 17 wins, 16 losses. Slice won by unanimous decision. His next match was against fellow Tough 10 competitor Matt Mitrione. Mitrione was lovingly referred to as Meathead by everyone in the house due to the fact that it genuinely seemed like all brain activity had ceased, yet somehow he was still ambulatory. He defeated Kimbo via TKO in the kind of fight that probably should have ended in both fighters being let go from the promotion. The loss was at least enough to convince Dana to let Kimbo go, and with that, his UFC adventure was over. Looking at it today, what's surprising about Kimbo's departure from the UFC is that he had only one loss on his record and was a huge ratings draw. Dana has kept fighters with abysmal records who couldn't draw flies to shit simply because they're company men. Slice being cut from the roster seemed like yet another textbook example of Dana White hubris. He said Kimbo sucked, and in his mind, the single loss was enough to prove it. Being right mattered more to Dana than how many pay-per-views Kimbo could sell. Between 2011 and 2013, he tried his hand at boxing and went undefeated across 7 fights against guys whose skill level was lower than Brendan Schaub's IMDb ratings.
Dicey!
None of them even have Wikipedia pages, so Slice was basically out here beating up NPCs. In 2015, he returned to the world of MMA under the Bellator promotion. Scott Coker, Bellator CEO, master of the dark arts, and one of the greatest freak show promoters not currently employed by Fight Circus, worked his necromancy to reanimate the 52-year-old carcass of Ken Shamrock for a fight versus Kimbo.
Well, here's something you thought you'd never hear. In this corner, Ken Shamrock. In this corner, Kimbo Slice.
Bellator worked an angle of this being a hotly anticipated match years in the making, due to the fact that they had once been scheduled to fight in Elite XC, but the match had fallen through.
I think everybody here knows the history behind that bout. It arguably could have been the greatest ratings deliver in the history of mixed martial arts TV.
That's the most retarded shit I ever heard, mentally.
In reality, the announcement of this fight didn't so much as make my loins twitch, and the MMA community at large viewed it as a depressing cash grab on the part of Bellator. But enough people wanted to see the 52-year-old dust-filled husk of Ken Shamrock versus a 41-year-old Slice that Bellator 138 was one of the most successful shows they ever did. What that says about the rest of Bellator's events, I don't know, but either way, Scott Coker was able to maintain an erection that night without having to visualize Gabby Garcia beating up someone's grandmother. The fight result itself was more controversial than a TED Talk on Judaism by Kanye West. The most knowledgeable man in MMA, Joe Rogan,
because your striking has accelerated in these giant jumps,
said the fight was a fix.
That fight looked fake as fuck. There's a couple things I don't like about that fight. I don't like that clinch, that long clinch that they had where they were mouth to ear. They were mouth to each other's ears for
and
a
no
long
one was really striking.
Time. When Ken did take him down, he never hit him once. How about that?
And people just ran with it. It's also worth noting that both Slice and Shamrock tested positive for steroids post-fight. Regardless of the fight's legitimacy, Kimbo came away with the win, and Bellator came away with massive ratings and proof that Slice was still a draw. On February 19th, 2016, the Bellator circus rolled into town once more for one of the most infamous matches in MMA history, Kimbo Slice versus Dada 5000. I'm not going to talk about or criticise the fight itself because this fight was almost responsible for killing both participants. Dada 5000, a man with 0 fights to his name and even less conditioning, never should have been offered a fight in the first place. He was so exhausted by the end of round 3, he suffered a heart attack post-fight and spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Kimbo was left in such a bad way post-fight, he never fought or even trained again. Unknown to fans, Kimbo had been on treatment for high blood pressure for years and had only recently discovered his condition was much worse than he ever thought. His heart was enlarged and just wasn't pumping blood the way it was supposed to. After the fight with Dada 5000, his family begged him to retire from fighting, but fighting was all he knew, so Kimbo accepted a fight at Bellator 158 in July of 2016. He never made it to that fight. His condition worsened to the point where, at age 42, he was in line for heart transplant surgery. The surgery never happened, and Kimbo died of traumatic heart failure on June 6, 2016, 4 months after his last fight. It's still hard to fathom that a man who looked like his max bench press was the gym could die so young because his own heart failed him. And while his MMA record wasn't exactly the stuff of legend, his larger-than-life personality meant that he was more beloved than other fighters far more successful than him, and that he would be remembered as the heart and soul of Season 10.
You know, one thing I've learned being here, my spare time, I really found myself doing a lot of, one-on-one connecting, like praying and, putting everything in perspectives between me and God. Something I haven't done in a long time. I hope it don't make me all nice and mushy.
A newer, gentler Kimbo Slice?
Yeah, I don't know. That's like an oxymoron, man. That can't go. Like oil and water. It just can't mix. I guess whenever I decide to shave the beard, that's when I'll probably put Kimbo at rest. But would Kimbo ever be at rest?
The overall winner of the show was Roy Big Country Nelson, who defeated Brendan Schaub in the final. And with that, there is no one else interesting to talk about in Season 10. No one at all. Nope. Guys, did you know that I'm friends with real musicians now? Like actual professional musicians? Due to my close proximity to people far more talented than I'll be taking my latest song that I wrote all by myself, Real Irishman, on Stadium Tour. That's right, I'm transitioning from MMA videos to full-time music singer. On the strength of a 30-second song I wrote as a joke, I am leapfrogging way more talented people than me to immediately start playing in the biggest venues in the world. Join me on the I'll Surprise You tour this summer. Was that too subtle? I feel like that was subtle. The impact of The Ultimate Fighter on the UFC and MMA in general is difficult to calculate. While the show is credited with saving the UFC in Season 1, Season 10 was the only subsequent season to have any kind of cultural impact thanks to Kimbo Slice. The effect that the show had on the sport itself is more questionable, as I've spoken to former fighters from that era who all lamented the fact that post-Tough 1, their gyms were overflowing with tap-out wearing Jersey Shore stereotypes who all wanted to train UFC. Whether you saw it as a good thing or a bad thing, Tough definitely captured the casual market's attention. Over the span of 5 years and 10 seasons, the golden era of Tough produced 3 champions and multiple contenders. But whether or not Tough really does produce fighters of the same quality as those who took the traditional route to the UFC is still up for debate. The vast majority of champions the show produced, Forrest Griffin, Rashad Evans, Matt Serra, and Juliana Pena, would all lose the belt on their very first title defense. One thing that is unquestionable is the Golden Age is a time capsule from an era of MMA that does not and never could exist again. The tap-out shirts, the disgusting pranks, the house flooded with alcohol, none of these things are present in modern day Tough, and for good reason. But I can't help but feel a bit like without them, the show has lost whatever it had that made it appeal to non-MMA fans, and nowadays, Tough is basically like a redundant version of Dana White's Contender Series. But we'll always have Season 10. Okay, I get it. You're like, Napoleon, how could you talk about Season 10 and not talk about Brendan Schaub? Okay, you want Schaub talk? Alright. Let's discuss the gringo pappy in the room. From February to December of 1916, the Battle of Verdun was fought in the western front of France. It was the longest battle of the war, and the costliest battle in human history. Over 1 million men died at an average of 70,000 per month. The Germans' aim was never to capture the city of Verdun. Their plan was to draw as many French troops into the fortress city as possible, like cattle to be slaughtered. The idea was to bleed France white and force their ultimate capitulation. Verdun survivor and winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, Jean Genet, wrote of his experiences there. "We are 9 in a hole. Nothing will get us out of here. But we have eaten. We must relieve ourselves. The first one to feel the urges climbs out. He has been there for 2 days now, 10 feet away, killed with his trousers down. We crap on paper and throw it up and out, and when we have no more paper, we do it in our haversacks. The Battle of Verdun continues. We go in our hands. Dysentery flows between our fingers. We crap blood. We go where we lie. We are devoured by the flames of thirst. We drink our own urine. If we remain in this battlefield, it's because they don't let us get away." And that's still funnier than Brendan Schaub's entire stand-up comedy career. I've been Napoleon Blown Apart. You've been wonderful. Thank you. Good night.